Hello and welcome. One of the central themes of the Prime Minister's re-election campaign is his promise to turn India into the world's third largest economy over the next few years. What will it take for India to first become number 3 and then achieve the status of an economic superpower, developed country by 2047? It is to talk about this very important theme that Business Today is setting up the big India at 100 summit on the 26th of August in New Delhi, and to get a sense of the factors that are working in India's favor and the obstacles that the country would need to face on the road to 2047. I'm joined on this special broadcast by my colleagues at the Business Today Multiverse. I want to start introducing Sourav Majumdar, editor of Business Today magazine. With us is Siddharth Zarabi, managing editor at Business Today Television. Shailendra Bhatnagar joins us. He heads up markets coverage for Business Today. So welcome, and I want to go across to Siddharth first, because we are hearing, Siddharth, again and again from the Prime Minister, as we did on Independence Day, this idea that we will be the third largest economy by the next few years. Does the government have a timeline? Because the SBI Eco Wrap talks about 2047. We're seeing a lot of economic commentary saying that's going to be tough to achieve. Does the government have a particular timeline in mind, or is this just an election promise to go across the 2024 hump?
Well, Rahul, thank you for having me on here. I think the government doesn't specify somewhere by when, but if you look at the data, at the current rate of growth, and if we were to keep incrementally adding on, it's very clear that the third largest economy target is well within sight. I'm going to cite what former RBI governor and respected economist himself, Duri Subbarao, has written just today, and he has said that the fact that we will be the third largest economy is certain, and I quote, "Even if we slip up a bit," Duri Subbarao writes, "jumping to the third position is almost a certainty." Now, that's pretty much baked in fully into most estimates that India will become the third largest economy. There could be a slip up here or there. Some of the targets that we have seen in the recent past have also been slipped, but we will definitely be the third largest economy, while we continue to be perhaps the fastest growing economy in the near term.
Sourav, you and your team speak to a cross section of companies. What's the sense that you're picking up about the mood when it comes to invest at this moment? Private investment in India has been tepid last several years. Is that now beginning to change in a significant fashion, or do you see private investment still being one of the areas where India needs to really up the gear one notch?
Yes, Rahul, I think the government on its part through the budgets, the last two budgets in particular, has shown the way in terms of priming the economy with big investment plans and pushing infrastructure and across the board, spending. But the fact that private investment has to follow through is the need of the hour. And I think if once we speak to the cross section of corporate leaders, the mood is bullish. There is no doubt about this. The mood is bullish. They do want to invest. It's just a question of how soon and when. But the fact of the matter is there are investment plans which are being pushed through, particularly in the infrastructure space. You would have seen many of these headlines which are coming through. I think the confidence index, the BT confidence index also, which we put out regularly, shows that it's in a 5-quarter high in the last print, which is actually a good thing because they do feel confident. There are, however, global headwinds which could sort of stymie those plans, and that's something which is a cause for concern. And I'm sure that the government is also keeping a very close watch on that. You see it in many of those pronouncements from the government. But I would say, to sum it up, the overall mood definitely in corporate circles is pretty bullish.
Shail, we've seen the markets see a bit of a bull run over the last few weeks. Is that something that you see continuing in the medium term, or do you think because of all that's happening in China and internationally, there are serious headwinds that we'll have to deal with soon?
So, Rahul, as Sourav and Siddharth mentioned, whatever good that you are seeing happening in the economy is reflecting very well on the Indian markets. Of course, we have these bouts of corrections, but nonetheless, what is unfolding in front of us is probably the biggest bull market of our lifetimes, and that's simply because a 3.5 trillion economy is compounding at 6% annually, and that's no small joke. So over the next 2.5 decades, we'll see unparalleled wealth being created in Indian markets, and they'll be stratospherically higher than what they are as of now, simply because of compounding and the fact that hopes and aspirations and demographic dividend and democracy will ensure that we see the best possible wealth creation over the next 25 years when India turns 100.
You know, last year we had the first India at 100 summit with Business Today, and the whole idea at that time was that India is entering the 75th year of its independence. At that time, what needs to be done over the next 25 years to achieve, as the tagline says, global leadership. And that then just became a much bigger theme than it was when we started out. A lot more commentary around the whole idea, and Siddharth, for a long time, you know, it just seemed like words alone. But now, in the way that the Indian economy is growing, in the way that China's economic troubles seem to keep increasing, Japan, Germany and the other countries, because of their demographics and their stage of the economic cycle not growing as fast, those words at some point in time, aided by India's young workforce, could become a reality. The question only is, do we get there as fast as we can, or do we get there a little slower than is actually optimally possible?
Let me try and answer that question by referring everyone's attention to that word which is often used in India and elsewhere in the world, which is Kismat. And why do I use that? Because look at what has happened post-COVID, and Sourav and Shail will bear me out on this. Prior to that, the government of India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, undertook several reforms which were very radical in their nature to take the Indian economy in a certain direction. Make in India was just one part of them. And lo and behold, and unfortunately so, I must say that we had COVID, which had devastating consequences all across the world, including India. But most of the world, including India, is now out of COVID. In India, we have learned to deal with it, and in fact notched up several successes as we go along. But China continues to suffer from the aftermath. Just as we speak, one of the largest property developers has filed for bankruptcy. Absolutely. Unimaginable. So the decline, possible decline of China, the mishandling of the Chinese economy by the current administration, the fact that Xi Jinping chose to push away Narendra Modi and India, despite the hand of friendship that had been extended, is all coming back to bite the Chinese economy. And therefore, I say it is Kismat which is now propelling some of the things that the Prime Minister and this government had hoped for, which is foreign companies to come and manufacture in India through the foreign direct investment route. A lot of foreign capital is also coming in via the portfolio route into our market. So there is money that is coming onto the ground, it's coming in valuations and trying to price in the growth potential. And I just want to add one more quick bit before I throw it back to you, Rahul. Take a look at what will happen to the middle class in India. Various estimates, and it's very clear that over the next 25 years, the middle class will double in India. And if the middle class doubles, India at 100 will be 3 times the number of people who seek to live in urban areas, 4 or 5 times the number of two-wheelers and four-wheelers, multiple times the size of real estate in square footage terms. God knows how many millions of educational seats and capacity further added. The numbers are mind-boggling, and therefore India at 100, as long as we don't seriously sort of botch up things, is going to be the biggest destination for foreign capital and technology. Even if we are number 3 in economic terms, we will be a global driver and the country that provides impetus across various industrial sectors, Rahul.
But there are serious headwinds as well, Sourav. The fact that the artificial intelligence revolution is now upon us, which upends a lot of jobs in the way that we've known them to exist. The fact that India's ability to skill its young workforce is still not optimal, and the number of people getting degrees is much more than the number of people who are actually employable in the current workforce, and therefore, it's not just national income and national wealth, it's also about how that wealth is distributed and the need to ensure that our per capita income numbers are also going up, that wealth is distributed to the extent possible rather than getting concentrated at the top.
You're absolutely right, Rahul. In fact, I was about to mention this. You know, the gains of the economic progress which India will doubtlessly see over the next 25 years or till India reaches 2047. I think those are the critical points. The gains must percolate to the bottom half of the population. The unemployment, yes, the unemployment rate, the numbers are going down to our advantage. It is becoming better. But again, of course, there was COVID. Thereafter, however, we have to keep an eye on jobs, but the more important point is the quality of jobs. The quality of jobs, which means again this whole focus on skilling, and I would think that the focus on skilling is uppermost in terms of where we want the jobs story to go. I think that is very, very critical, and that is where I think the government is mindful of that. I would, however, like to also bring this whole point about participation of women in the workforce. That is also another point which we need to focus on, because that can add significantly to GDP. Multiple studies, multiple programs and commentators have talked about it, that we need to bring in the participation, increase the participation of women in the workforce. That continues to be a challenge, and therefore the per capita income, the entire per capita income story as well. However, I would also like to talk about some of the points where India and the G20 presidency itself this year can really make a big difference. And we have actually seen some of these things where India has already taken a big leap. For instance, the digital stack, Rahul. We all know the kind of steps the digital stack has helped India take as a nation. Whether you talk about Aadhaar, whether you talk about UPI, whether you talk about the ONDC, which is a big one coming up now in the process of being rolled out in a big way. I think all of these are game changers, and the world acknowledges it. The world acknowledges these things. India is actually showing the way in terms of UPI also, as we know. The second point, and very important, is also the whole thing about startups. India is the third largest base for startups in the world right now. The G20 presidency has given India a chance to really take the lead on startups with Startup 20. That can be a major employment generator going forward. So there are some of these big plus points as well, but you are right when you ask the whole quality of jobs and the whole point about participation of people, more and more educated people in the workforce continues to be a significant challenge which India must look at.
And the one suggestion which I pick up, Shail, which shows that the Indian investor is getting more and more sophisticated and more mature, is that when there is a bump along the way, there isn't a flight from the markets in the way that we'd seen in the 90s and the early part of the 2000s. The moment there was trouble, it would get compounded by the fact that investors want to run away with their money. Now, they're quite chill about it. Okay, they realize that yes, there is a bump, even if it's a big bump, but the market will overcome, and that suggests the growing maturity of India's financial markets.
Absolutely, Rahul, you hit it really on the head. If you look at, if you remove the last 4 or 5 months, and look at the 18-month period before that, foreign institutional investors withdrew something like $40 billion from Indian equities, and that did not even create a flutter on Dalal Street. That was because anywhere between 15 to 16,000 crore rupees worth of SIPs were coming in on a regular basis, month on month, and that provided a lot of support. So we are basically seeing Atmanirbharta working out really well on Indian markets, where we will now hold our top 50 companies compared with foreigners. There's always been this dichotomy in India where foreign owners or foreign investors have had more faith in Indian companies than Indians themselves. But over the last 3-4 years, you've been seeing that a dramatic shift has happened. If you just extrapolate this trend over the next maybe 3 or 4 years, what is now 18,000 crore rupees a month will be anywhere in the vicinity of 25,000 to 30,000 crore rupees a month in terms of monthly SIPs. And remember, these are quality companies that fund fund managers and the EPFO purchases. So that is a new shift, new maturity that's coming in. The other part, as Sourav very rightly touched upon, is of course the digital stack and the startups. Clearly, Indian markets are in a hurry, and they want to reflect all that and much more that's happening in the broader economy, in the microcosm that is the stock market.
Sourav, which sessions are you most excited about in that big India at 100 summit? You know, that galaxy of international CEOs, top Indian corporate titans, key ministers from the Modi government. You know, what are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I'm looking forward to the entire gamut of sessions, Rahul. But in particular, I think I would like to listen to Brad Smith also in terms of how he looks at the entire digital ecosystem playing out. I would like to listen to Mr. Gadkari. Of course, he very eloquently talks about the India infrastructure story every time we listen to him. And, you know, he's one minister who's really shown the way, shown the path, pun intended, the road to success, the road to 2047. Then there are interesting sessions also, Rahul, about consumption, you know, and how, you know, India can really catch on to that consumption, you know, sort of ecosystem in a better way. There's a whole lot of sessions, and I would definitely be interested in most of them, Rahul.
Siddharth, given the fact that we had the first edition last year, it's grown bigger, better, and coincidentally, it's happening on the same weekend as the B20, so we're seeing the kind of international presence which is otherwise very difficult to achieve at a key IP like this.
Absolutely, Rahul, and you know, on a side note, there's never been a G20 presidency like this. I have covered several G20 events, traveled for those, and this is, we've kind of set a new bar with all the dhol and the tamasha and the serious work that we have done in the G20 presidency. The B20 event again here, and I say this from ones that I have seen and reported on physically in different overseas locations. Even the B21 is a pretty big one in terms of not just the number of people who are coming, the kind of people who are coming, and this is reflective of the kind of interest that India is generating in serious major players. Now, of course, we could always quibble about the Teslas of the world and the Intels of the world, but a lot of fundamental work is happening, and the fact that we will have this event happen here also provides for an opportunity where people are able to talk freely and generate ideas, which is what precisely this entire event is going to be all about, Rahul.
You know, and there is no thought leadership platform which is at the intersection of macroeconomics, policy making, looking out into the future, crystal gazing, and preparing a roadmap for what India needs to do between now and 2047 to achieve its true future. So the Business Today team is hard at work, and we're hoping to see you live on various platforms of the Business Today universe as we bring to you the BT India at 100 Summit, 26th of August, all day long, all across the BT multiverse. See you then.